Hi. I was recently watching a TED Talk featuring a man called David Brooks. And David said something which really resonated with me. He said we can go through a crisis in our life and we can be broken, or we can be broken open. This immediately brought to mind that all of us have around ourselves an egoic shell, a shell which we protect ourselves with. We feel we are vulnerable, so we have to put on this front, this shelter around us. And if we are broken open, a great change comes upon us, because then we have revealed to ourselves our real self. And it's often at that time that we start discarding gradually, breaking open the shell and letting people see us as we really are. And as we do this, as we're willing to become vulnerable, as more and more of the shell is broken away, we become more joyful. And something else that David Brooks said, which also made me think, he mentioned there's a difference between happiness and joy. Happiness is of the ego self. Happiness is of the shell, not the real self. The self covered by the shell. When something happens, for example, we get a promotion at work, we are happy. If our football team wins and we support them, we are happy. If our child gets good marks at school, we are happy. But what are we happy for? Often we are happy for ourselves. It's just a building up of our own ego. We feel more important. Joy, on the other hand, is something else again. It comes from within. It permeates out right through the shell. It's everlasting. The joy we have is part of what we are. Many years ago, I had an epiphany, which I've described a couple of times on these videos, and I realized what I am, and by inference, what you are, what all people are. And that is that we are infinite love, infinite joy, infinite compassion, infinite understanding. That moment didn't last long for me. The shell came down again, but it was cracked, and the shell has begun to disintegrate over the years since that happened. That happened a long time ago, way back in my 30s. And I believe that more and more of the shell is falling away. There's still quite a bit left. I know that. I'm not willing to be completely vulnerable, although sometimes I endeavour to be, or think that I am, vain enough to think that I am. The point is, there is a difference between happiness and joy. And if we have a crisis, it's a crisis that we've usually brought on ourselves by our thinking, by our feeling, by our interpretation of our lives as they are now, to the point where our soul cannot stand it any longer and brings on a crisis. And that crisis can break us, disintegrate us in a bad way, but it can also break us open to reveal to ourselves what we really are. And once that begins to happen, once the love for ourselves flows through, once the joy of being ourselves flows through, once the identification of I am all right, otherwise I wouldn't exist. Once we accept that, then we can help others, truly help them to feel what they really are. And instead of seeking happiness, enable them to feel the joy of what we all are.